Good evening and welcome to this December 10th meeting of the St. Tammany Parish School Board. Mrs. Coakley, would you call the roll?
Mr. Nation.
Here.
Mr. Green. Mrs. Heinz. Mr. Derman. Mr. Loop. Mr. Harrell. Mrs. Richardson. Mr. Winkler. Mrs. Drucker. Mr. Bittencourt. Mrs. Lamy. Mr. Hersey. Mr. Bro. Mr. Kuzan. Mrs. Page.
All right, if everyone would please stand for the invocation and pledge of allegiance, which I will lead tonight. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, as we begin Hanukkah today and the Christmas season in just a couple of weeks, our minds are turned to you, and we ask that you continue to help us to help those who are less fortunate in our community. Let us always be a source of strength and comfort to all of your children. And help us always to remember the reason for these seasons, which ultimately find their source and their substance in you. Finally, be with us tonight, as always, as we make all decisions and deliberations for the betterment of the parents, children, and educators of this great public school system. These things we pray in the name of your Son, our Savior. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, are there any board members who would like to recognize visitors tonight? All right, I don't have any visitors to recognize tonight, but I would like to recognize three of our board members, well, two of our board members and one of our administration. We have a trifecta of birthdays, and I'm not going to ask anybody to sing happy birthday unless Mrs. Drucker would like to lead us, or Mr. Winkler. I'm not certainly going to do it, but we'll start with the board members. Mrs. Heinz, her birthday was yesterday. Mr. Harrell, your birthday is today, correct? And it was a red letter day because on this same day, Mr. Jabia was born many years ago. So happy birthday to all three of you. All right. At this time, we move into Christmas celebration videos and the art contest winner. Ms. Hanson. All right. Very good. Ms. Hanson, welcome.
Good evening, Superintendent Jabia, Board President Nation, board members, and guests. Tonight, I'm happy to share a bit of holiday cheer brought to us by Covington Elementary students. As with many things 2020, we are celebrating Christmas a little differently this year. Typically, we have some of our kindergarten students come to central office and they help us decorate the tree in the foyer with ornaments that they've made themselves. We usually follow that up with Christmas carols performed by third grade students, also from the same school. While COVID forced us to do things differently, we wanted to ensure that our students still had the opportunity to share their special kind of Christmas spirit. This year, Dr. Menard and her crew, TV crew, went to Covington Elementary to capture video of the students making the Christmas ornaments, and also to catch a very special Christmas performance by one of the third grade classes. Of course, we had some elves from Human Resources surprise the students with special treats, as we do every year. Let's take a look at the video. Not quite the same as we do every year, but still just as touching and as wonderful and very memorable experience. Thank you again to Dr. Menard and her TV crew, and thanks also to Covington Elementary and to the music teacher, Miss Peggy Crane, and to their principal, Melissa Eason. I have one more announcement to share with you tonight. I am honored to introduce the artist of this year's St. Tammany Parish Public School System Christmas card, Paige Pratt. She is an 11th grade talented art student at Lakeshore High School. Her teacher is Miss Robin Kennedy. I'd like for the student to please come forward for a commemorative copy of her artwork and ask that our superintendent join the student for a picture. And you can see right there, there's our official Christmas card for 2020. Her parents are in the audience, so please stand and be recognized. Thank you all again for allowing me to be able to share this Christmas joy and the students to bring you this Christmas joy. Hope you have a wonderful Christmas and a happy holiday season. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Harris. All right, we move on now to public comments. I'd like to recognize Superintendent Frank Jabbia at this time.
Good afternoon, board members. I just wanted to go through a few things with you. Ms. Heinz asked me in our last meeting to kind of give updates as we move forward at our meetings as related to COVID. So I want to go through some numbers with you. We did see 91 cases increase in the last 7 days. That's from last Thursday for a total of 496 active positives, which is up 0.21. So we went from 1.1 to 1.31 in our cases. We did jump 1,000 in quarantines also, so we're up 2.61. This is all for students. And, excuse me, students in quarantine is up 40 cases, but that is also included in the positives. So that is already counted in the 91 cases that have gone up. But we did see a 0.48 increase in our students that turned positive after being quarantined. As I met with you last time, well, first let me go ahead and say, we have seen the majority of our cases have been related to high school, 9 through 12. The majority of our positive cases have come from there. I'm not a doctor, but I will say that is the most social group that we have that gather more often than others outside of school. Like I said, I'm not a doctor, but just hearing from the principals, they're finding out about gatherings and such that are happening outside the school day. So I just kind of want to make you aware of that also. But also I'd like to, we had talked about the Louisiana Department of Health guidelines that we were waiting on. Those did go in effect. We did roll those out. We got clearance from Louisiana Department of Education, and our principals enacted those. I kind of want to briefly go through those real quick. So a student can return early from quarantine instead of the 14 days that were mandated before. They can return early under the 2 stipulations. The first one is after day 5, you can go receive an antigen test or a PCR test, either one, after day 5, on or after day 5. And if you are negative and you have no symptoms, you can return on day 8, just like we had stated last week. And also a student or family or an employee, if they chose not to get a test, they could sit out the full 10 days and return on day 11 with no test, as long, again, as they are symptom-free. So those are the 2 stipulations that did get passed. They were adopted in their entirety by the CDC and the Louisiana Department of Health, and then adopted again by Louisiana Department of Education. Real quick update on Chromebooks. We have issued all of our Chromebooks, excuse me. We have issued all of our Chromebooks K through 12 to the schools. The last bunch is being issued to the students by the schools, but they are in the schools' hands to roll out to our K through 3 group. And we are finalizing all of the teacher Chromebooks of the last little group. We have a few pockets that we were distributing to, and we're finalizing those, and we'll get those out by Monday. But again, I want to commend Mr. Bouillon and his staff for all they've done. Like I said last week, they've been working nonstop to get this accomplished and get it rolled out. In case we were given news that is outside of our control, we would be prepared to move forward. So that's where we stand right now. I just thought I'd give you all a quick update, okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Jabbia. And I would like to take this opportunity to recognize Mr. Jabbia for the great presentation he gave on Tuesday to the St. Tammany Chamber of Commerce, and we're so glad to be able to say the St. Tammany Chamber of Commerce rather than having it split between East and West as it has been for so many years. But I also want to thank Tom Meyer, who's the current president of that board, as well as Lacey Osborne, who's their executive director, for inviting Mr. Jabbia and myself to participate in their webinar. We spoke to about 40 of the members of the chamber. The speaker, of course, primarily was Mr. Jabbia. I was honored to be able to introduce him. And Mrs. Osborne said very clearly on that call to her membership that there was no doubt in her mind that we have a great superintendent, and that in the chamber is looking forward to great days ahead as we've had in the past. So thank you, Mr. Jabbia. At this time, we would like to move on to 3-minute public comments. Up first is the interim president of the St. Tammany Federation, Ms. Patricia Craddock. Ms. Craddock, welcome.
No? It's, oh,
I can. Pass them out first.
can you pass those out?
Okay. Lewis behind you. Lewis behind you. There you go. Thank you.
Good evening, Superintendent Jabbia and board members. I come before you with a memorandum of understanding for the collective bargaining agreement that you will be considering on Monday. I want to assure all of you that we are not changing anything. We are trying to clear up language that may cause confusion among the membership, central office, and employees. The first provision I want to explain is Article 1205. We are not changing anything. We are adding 2 words, without pay, to letter G. The same 2 words appear throughout that article. Our concern is that the members read this and think they can't use their sick days if they have them. Employees may use their accumulated sick days for surgery, not that the surgery will be without pay. The second provision I want to explain is the compensation package. The school board proposed and we agreed to 3 benchmarks that must be met in the 3rd section. However, these were not posted on the website. Number 3 is not the same language that we had agreed upon. They are as follows. A second pay level increase of $500 for certificated employees and $350 for non-certificated employees will be granted contingent upon the following. The benchmarks are these. The enrollment as of February 1st, 2021 is equal to or more than February 1st, 2020. There has been no major reduction in projected ad valorem taxes, sales taxes, or the minimum foundation program, which is state funding for the year 21-22. A 10% or more reduction in any of these revenues would be considered a major reduction. Projected cost of the continuation of the COVID-19 pandemic after federal and state funding is causing a deficit in the general fund budget before adding in the second pay level increase for the employees. On the school board website is this last sentence of the released information. Other pay increases may be improved for the 21-22 year at the discretion of the board. That is not what we had agreed upon. The sheet that I and the board signed off on had those benchmarks A, B, and C that are included in this MOU. This leads people to believe that because there is no mention of the benchmarks, they are not aware of what needs to be done in order to obtain number 3. I ask the board to consider this MOU to help clear up some of the misunderstandings in the hope that it may help the board and the membership move forward. Adopting this MOU tonight will not cause a 5-day delay. We have negotiated in good faith for 30 years and support the proposed changes and financial package. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mrs. Craddock. Move on now to Ms. Michelle West. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Good evening. My name is Michelle West, and I can't be at Monday's meeting, so I'm here to address you tonight about something important to me, and that is respect. First, let me just say that I am a proud graduate of Slidell High School, and I've always had a great deal of respect for all of my former teachers. So much so that when I graduated from college to become a teacher myself, I came back to my home district so that I could have the same dedication and commitment to the children of St. Tammany Parish that my teachers had for me. And I know that as an educator in this parish for 10 years now, 10 years of students could stand up here and attest for my unending commitment to them. My dedication to my students this year has been greater than any other year, and I'm sure any other teacher could say that. I knew this year would present challenges that we've never experienced, and like always, teachers have risen to the occasion. Whatever our school year looked like, I wanted to make sure that I provided the best education that I could for my students. And after hours and hours of work each day, including late into the night, grading and planning some more, do you know that I still feel inadequate? I still feel like I'm not doing a good enough job. And when I take a step back and try to reflect on why I feel that way, it has everything to do with respect. I was hoping that the new collective bargaining agreement would demonstrate the respect that all parties in the negotiating process, union included, had for its teachers. I was hoping to finally be seen as the dedicated professional that I am, but I was wrong. I do not have the time in these few minutes to discuss all of my grievances and the lack of respect displayed in the new CBA proposal. However, the financial package and granting our $1,000 COVID appreciation stipend only upon ratification is disappointing. I believe I recall several of you at board meetings over the summer advocating for hazard pay for teachers, and now we only get that appreciation money if we ratify the new contract, which is fraught with numerous other issues. Please know the teachers of this district deserve better. And remember that actions speak louder than words, and if you respect us like you claim to, then respectfully, truly respectfully, I ask that you prove it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. West, and we would ask the audience not to show any support or by likewise any condemnation, no boos or support for speakers. All right, so now up next is Stephanie Underwood. Ms. Stephanie Underwood. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Stephanie Underwood. I'm a 6th grade teacher at Lancaster. First, I want to say thank you so much for all of your hard work and for listening to my concerns, as well as the others that have spoken, will speak, and have emailed you. Without further ado, I will get to the point of why I chose to speak today. We have all heard time and time again that we are going through unprecedented times, and I believe that this collective bargaining agreement definitely falls under this umbrella. One of the main reasons is we have a proposed 4-year agreement that has been negotiated by an acting superintendent and an interim union president. In which case, one, if not both, of these people will not be here for most of the time that it's active. I do have a master's degree in business, and although I'm currently a teacher, I feel that I have the knowledge and skill set to say that this doesn't make sense. Most businesses wouldn't try to have someone implement something long-term if the lead negotiators may not be remaining in their positions much longer. It is best business practice to have a negotiating team that is invested for the long term. Therefore, I feel that it is clear that this isn't the best agreement possible. So in order to not only point out concerns, I will present you with suggestions for possibly making this situation the best it could be. The first thing I would hope would happen is the COVID stipend be removed from the agreement and given to employees graciously by the board separately. With this stipend being tied to the agreement, one could argue that if our agreement wasn't up for renegotiating, we would not be receiving a stipend at all. I know for a fact that this is not the wishes of the board. I have heard at different meetings that the board members want to reward employees for the hard work we are putting in. So I feel that this is a reasonable request. I feel that you all have the power to do what's right and just and separate the two and still issue the stipend to employees before Christmas. My next suggestion is for the board to decide that the proposed collective bargaining agreement be thrown out and the school system continue working under our memorandum of understanding until after the union has conducted their upcoming election in April for president and other officers. Doing this will allow both Mr. Frank Jabbia and whoever is elected the official president of the union to sit down with a more permanent negotiation team. I do believe that you all, as well as the central office, have the best interests of all your employees at heart, and I do believe that you will do the right thing. Please consider these suggestions and the suggestions of all your constituents when it's time to vote on the proposed collective bargaining agreement. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Up next is Mr. Brant Osborne. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm Brant Osborne from Slidell. I'm a teacher at Slidell High School. Go Tigers. I didn't bring a speech this time, so if I go off the rails, Mr. Kose, just hit that trapdoor button, and I'll be gone. Gotcha. A little bit about the process of collective bargaining. I was the sole member of the collective bargaining team. We did have the negotiators, the paid staff. We did have Trish Craddock. She stepped up after Debbie Green retired to take over that process. So, you know, I'm not going to get into the entirety of it, but the problem I had was the way the information was released. You know, there was a lot that went on this week. I pressed the Federation to get that information out there. When it finally got out there, that's when some of these issues could be resolved with the MOU. So I had a conversation with Larry Samuel, the Federation lawyer. We dealt with the issue of the language. So at this point, with the clarifications and with the MOU, I'm going to give people time to process that. And that's all I've wanted from the beginning. That's all the people wanted from the beginning, so they can make an informed choice about the next 4 years. I spoke to you last time about the sub situation, and I just have to report it is dire at this point. I dealt with I'm the rep in the building. I dealt with 5 separate rattled teachers who are just, you know, they're giving up planning time, and a lot is being demanded. I do have one person that I recruited to go through the process just so we would have one more sub. It's still slow, okay? So she received notification on December the 2nd. She was told the training wasn't until December the 15th. So then you still have to factor in a background check. So are we going to get subs before Christmas? It doesn't look like it. So if you guys can think of any way, any personnel, any possibility of helping us out, we really need it because we want to stay in person. I mean, I think we all agree with that in this room. We just need that support. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Up next is Ms. Jody Griswold. Welcome.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. My name is Jody Griswold. I'm a first grade teacher at Cypress Cove Elementary. I know Mr. Jabbia visited us last week. And I came to just discuss the proposed contract that we have, hoping that maybe some light could be shed on some issues that teachers are concerned about, and maybe we could come to some form of agreement on that. I do want to start, though, on a positive note. I would like to thank the union for recognizing the paras that we have in our schools, because from what I read, if I'm understanding it correctly, they will receive a pay increase per hour if they are to be in a substitute in the classroom for a half a day or a whole day. And I thought that was just remarkable to financially compensate them for that. As far as the COVID stipend, and I know that this has been discussed by some other teachers, it is being given out of appreciation, and it is very welcomed. We teachers have gone very far above and beyond because we want to do that for our students. But it has been very daunting. I go home and I kind of crash on the ground when I get home because the day is very long and requires more than just teaching in the school day. With that being said, the COVID stipend should not be in conjunction with the contract. If it's something that's going to be given in appreciation, and I believe that's how it was worded, then it doesn't need to be part of a contract. The two are not the same. The $500 stipend that is also being offered for the step pay raise, I believe it was in the contract from 2016, 2020. So it wasn't given, I understand, because of the pandemic, but money was already allocated for that. So again, it really should not be part of the new proposed contract. There were some concerns about wording with medical emergency and how that would be covered. I think that some clarification needs to be given in regards to that. And then lastly, I just want to address the extra days that are being added to the end of the school year. And I'm just addressing this because my colleagues and I have talked about it. Again, our days are very long and very demanding. And we are already putting in an extra 30 minutes in the morning and an extra 30 minutes in the afternoon every day without financial compensation. So if those could be considered, it would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Griswold. Next up, and last but never least, Mrs. Lee Barrios.
Lee Barrios, retired teacher. Because no school board member questioned the superintendent's data calculation regarding school district COVID positivity rates when he reported last week, and because the newspaper reported the incorrect data and there has been no correction or retraction, I feel it's important to do that now publicly. Individuals rely on test results to guide their medical treatment and decisions on whether to self-isolate. Public health officials rely on the results to track the state of the pandemic, and policymakers use this information to guide decisions on reopening schools and businesses. In this case, the data was presented to justify reduction of the previously required quarantine days for students and staff exposed to the virus. The percent positive is exactly what it sounds like. The percentage of all coronavirus tests performed that are actually positive times 100%. It is not the percent of reported positives divided by the entire population of students or staff. There can be no positivity rate calculation for our schools because there has been no general testing in order to create a baseline from which to create policy. I would like to address the collective bargaining and ratification process. I became involved when employees reported that they requested to see their proposed agreement prior to their ratification meeting, but the union said, quote, "Unfortunately, it has to go before the school board and get voted on first." That made no sense whatsoever to me, that employees should be left in the dark. Then I saw that the school board agenda had not attached the contracts to the original agenda item for the meeting tonight, but that documents for other items were attached. I researched open meetings law and found that specific statute created in 2012 requiring the school board to prominently post the proposed agreement, quote, at least 5 business days prior to the vote. I sent that to Mr. Nation and Mr. Pete Jabbia and to the union Sunday night. The documents were posted and the board vote was rescheduled first tomorrow at 3 o'clock when employees and much of the public would not be able to attend for public comment. Then it was discovered that the 5-day requirement was not met. It was moved again to Monday night at 6 o'clock, a much better time. Mr. Jabbia emailed me this afternoon and said that although the LSBA attorney said, quote, the law does not specify 5 full days, and felt since we posted Monday through Friday we met the requirements of the law, unclosed, an abundance of caution was taken and your meeting and vote was rescheduled again for Monday. I call baloney. You actually pay these attorneys for what I consider to be bad advice. Teachers not only hurt by this confusion in scheduling and not having access to the agreement or guidance from the unions prior to their vote, but the internet is blown up with questions and concerns by employees. The financials are so poorly written that they misunderstood the real meaning. More on that Monday. I hope that however this turns out.
Ms. Berrios, your time has expired.
Okay, we'll take into consideration. And to Mr. Frank Jabbia, we all realize that this is very difficult for you. And we all think you're crazy. But you saw the video at the beginning of the meeting, and that's what this is all about. And we need you to hang in there. Thank you.
Mrs. Berrios, thank you so much. All right, moving on now to our agenda items. Approval of the minutes for the special meeting held November 5th, 2020. Is there a motion to approve? Mr. Kuzan, is there a second? Mrs. Page? We'll now open the floor for, is there any comments from board members, I'm sorry, or any comments from the public? All right, now the floor is open for voting. And the minutes are adopted unanimously. Moving on to item B, approval of the minutes for the special meeting held November 12, 2020. Is there a motion to approve? Mr. Durman, is there a second? Mr. Harold? Any comments or questions from board members? Any comments or questions from the public? The floor is open to vote. And those minutes are adopted with 13 yeas, 0 nays, and 1 abstention. All right, moving on now to item C, approval of minutes for the regular meeting held November 12, 2020. Is there a motion to approve? Mrs. Heinz, second by Mr. Loop. Any comments or questions from board members? Any comments or questions from the public? The floor is open to vote. And those minutes are adopted, 13 yeas, 0 nays, and 1 abstention. We now move on to appropriate retirement resolutions for the following certificated personnel subsequent to November 12, 2020, and the chair recognizes Mr. Kosei.
Thank you, President Nation, Superintendent Jabbia, and board members and audience. I bring you the following retirement resolutions on the certificated personnel for this month. We have Kathleen C. Payne, Boyette Junior High, 28.25 years, all in St. Tammany Parish. Tommy K. Galloway, Woodlake Elementary, 15.37 years, all in St. Tammany Parish.
Is there a motion to approve? Mr. Bedcourt moves, second by Mr. Harrell. Any comments or questions from board members? Any comments or questions from the members of the public? All right, the floor is now open to vote. And those resolutions are adopted unanimously. Moving on to item E, appropriate retirement resolutions for the following non-certificated personnel subsequent to November 12, 2020. And again, the chair recognizes Mr. Kosei.
Thank you, Mr. Nation. And before me, I have the appropriate retirement resolutions for the following non-certificated personnel for our system. Sherry T. Roberts, Boyette Junior High, 8.38 years, all in St. Tammany Parish. Brenda T. Brookshire, Covington Warehouse, 12.63 years, all in St. Tammany Parish. Lisa B. Shaw, Marigny Elementary, 18.96 years, all in St. Tammany Parish. Virginia H. Marie Williams, Salmon High School, 21.22 years, all in St. Tammany Parish. Betty M. Peavy, Slidell Junior High, 22.68 years, all in St. Tammany Parish. Gerald J. Abear, Slidell Warehouse, 23.24 years, all in St. Tammany Parish. And finally, Charles M. Fogg, Transportation Center, 22.14 years, all in St. Tammany Parish.
Is there a motion to approve? All right, Mrs. Drucker moves to approve. Is there a second? Mrs. Heinz? Any comments or questions from board members? Any comments or questions from the public? The floor is open to vote. And those resolutions are adopted unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Kosei. We move on now to approval of recommendations from committee as a whole meeting for Business Affairs Administrative held December 3rd, 2020. The chair recognizes Mr. Green. Stand by, we have a little technical difficulties.
The committee as a whole for Business Affairs and Administrative met on December 3rd, 2020. And for item A, the committee recommends acceptance of the revisions to school board policy, section BD.
All right, is that a motion by the committee?
So moved.
All right, motion by Mr. Green, is there a second? Second by Mrs. Page. Any comments or questions from board members? Any comments or questions from the public? Okay, the floor is open to vote. And that is adopted unanimously. Okay, Mr. Green?
Item B, the committee recommends acceptance of a new virtual discipline policy, and I so move.
All right, motion by Mr. Green, is there a second? Second by Mr. Harold. Any comments or questions from board members? Any comments or questions from the public? All right, the floor is open to vote. And that is adopted unanimously.
Item C, the committee recommends acceptance of the low base bid submitted by ARC Mechanical Contractors in the amount of $411,900 for the server room, HVAC, and generator replacement at the Information Technology Center, STPSB project number 2005.
All right, is there a motion to approve? Mrs. Heinz, would you like to make that motion? All right, Mrs. Heinz moves. Is there a second? Mr. Derman? Any comments or questions from board members? Any comments or questions from members of the public? The floor is open to vote. And that is adopted unanimously.
Item D, the committee recommends acceptance of Abney Early Childhood Center new classroom buildings is substantially complete, subject to architect's recommendations, submission of all regulatory requirements, and approval of Superintendent Jabbia, STPSB project number 1906.
All right, is there a motion to approve? Motion by Mr. Hersey, second by Mr. Kuzan. Any comments or questions from board members? Any comments or questions from the public? Floor is open to vote. And that is adopted unanimously.
And finally, the committee recommends acceptance of Abney Elementary School new parking lot as substantially complete, subject to architect's recommendations, submission of all regulatory requirements, and approval of Superintendent Jabbia, STPSB project number 1907.
Okay, is there a motion to approve? Mr. Hersey moves to approve. Mr. Kuzan seconds. Is there any comments or questions from board members? Any comments or questions from members of the public? The floor is open to vote. and that motion is adopted unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. President. That concludes our report.
Thank you, Mr. Green. We move on now to election of board officers, one-year terms effective January 1st, 2021, concluding December 31st, 2021. And our first our first election is for the office of president. So now open the floor for nominations, and I would like to take the opportunity to nominate Mr. Brandon Harrell as president for 2021. Is there a second to my nomination? Second by Mr. Green. All right, now is there anyone else who would like to place a name into nomination for president? Okay, not hearing any. Will all those in favor of Mr. Harold as president for 2021, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed, other than Mr. Harrell? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Congratulations, Mr. Harrell. So, and with you, we can actually call you President-elect. So, Mr. President-elect Harrell, would you like to say anything at this time?
I just want to thank all of y'all for y'all's support. I look forward to leading this board for the next year. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Harrell. All right, we'll move on now to election of vice president, and the floor is open for nominations. Mr. Kuzan?
Nominate Ms. Lisa Page.
Okay. Mrs. Lisa Page has been nominated. Is there a second to the nomination? Second by Mr. Hersey. All right. Any other nominations for vice president? Okay. Not seeing any. I will assume the nominations are closed. All those in favor of electing Mrs. Lisa Page as vice president, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Congratulations, Mrs. Page. I'd like to offer you the same courtesy. Vice President-elect, would you like to say anything?
Certainly. I would just like to thank everyone for electing me as Vice President. This past year, I chaired Education Human Resources, and I really feel good about serving this past year, and I just really feel honored and would like to help Brandon Harrell any way I can next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Page. We move on now to election of chairs for the committee as a whole meetings. Again, these are one-year terms effective January 1st, 2021, concluding December 31st, 2021. And the first committee chair that we're to elect is the Human Resources and Education Committee Chair. So the floor is now open to make those nominations. Mr. Luke?
I'd like to nominate Mr. Michael Winkler.
All right, Mr. Mike Winkler has been nominated by Mr. Loop. There, any other nominations? Oh, I'm sorry, second. Yep, thank you, Mr. Bedcourt, for keeping me in line. Second by Mr. Kuzan. Anyone else would like to place a name into nomination? Okay, not seeing any. We'll assume the nominations are closed. All those in favor of electing Mr. Mike Winkler as the chair of the Human Resources and Education Committee, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries. Congratulations, Mr. Winkler. And again, give you the same opportunity. If you would like to say anything, you're certainly not obliged to. But.
Yes, I'd like to thank the board for their confidence in me, and I hope to keep working with this. After being a teacher and an assistant principal and a principal and a board member, I hope to keep helping this school board improve. So I appreciate your confidence. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Winkler. Finally, is the Business Affairs and Administrative Committee, and the floor is now open for nominations, and I see Mr. Derman's hand. Mr. Derman?
I would like to nominate Matt Green to retain the chairmanship.
Okay. All right. Motion by Mr. Derman to nominate Matt Green, second by Mrs. Drucker. All right. Are there any other nominations? Okay, not seeing any. The nominations will be considered closed. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed by like sign? Any abstentions? All right, motion carries. Congratulations, Mr. Green. And again, if you would like to say anything, you certainly are welcome so to do.
Well, I'd just like to thank the board for their confidence and I look forward to working with
Very. Thank you, Mr. Green. All right, that concludes our elections for 2021. We move on now to announcements by yours truly. Our special meeting is Monday, this upcoming Monday at 6 p.m. to discuss the collective bargaining agreement. And again, Monday night will be televised, if you will, streamed by YouTube, just like all our meetings are done now. So if you're not able to attend in person, please encourage folks to watch on YouTube. All right, and all schools and offices are closed December 23rd through January 1st for the Christmas break. All will reopen on Monday, January the 4th. And the next committee as a whole meetings are Thursday, January the 14th at 6 p.m. and the board meeting is January the 21st at 7 p.m. Mr. Jabbia, do you have anything else? With no further business to come before the board, I declare this meeting adjourned.